grew up in Neillsville, Wisconsin. I lived there until I was in high school. I was about a year and a half when we moved there. Doing things with music, when I first learned how to play an instrument or sing, those are the things that brought out the greatest joy. Once I started playing in band is the first time I really remember that I had any hopes for doing something. I liked my band director. If I had somebody that I looked up to, it was him. I knew that I was going to be a band director. It was his love of music. Just felt comfortable with him. A lot of my life was spent just finding a place where I could feel comfortable with people. Well, I just knew that I wanted to teach. I wanted to teach kids band music because I loved the music, the interplay between all the different voices, all the different instruments. I was so fascinated with the sound of each instrument, and eventually I got to learn to play almost all the instruments. I went through a practice teaching class when I was in college. The first thing they did was send me out to junior high school, and when I got there, the first thing, this is not the way it's supposed to usually work, but the director said, "Oh good, you're here. I'm going down to the staff room to have some coffee." I had a couple of 8th grade girls who gave me a real runaround. I left after that rehearsal. It was the most painful thing I'd ever experienced. I walked out of there and I said, I will never, ever teach again. It took 10 years before I went back. About 5 years later, a friend of mine called me and said they need a choir director, a junior high choir director in Maple Lake. And it was about a 3-month thing. And I went over there and started doing that, and I loved it. I found out that not all kids were like those 2 8th graders that I had had. It encouraged me to go back, and this time I had a supervising teacher who was especially kind and understanding to me and my situation, and helped me finish up my degree. I graduated in March, and between then and probably it was a month and a half, I applied for seven different schools, and I got heard back from 4 of the 7. 3 of them were "you suck" letters. The other one said, "we'd like to interview you," and that's how I ended up in where was I?
Sleepy Eye?
Sleepy Eye?
Yes.
I was 44 years old. From the time I started, I loved it. I loved teaching the kids. I loved their response to me. I loved how I could make them want to work really hard to be good at something and to bring out that love in the music. They just loved that it was a challenging class, that I kept things going, and there was no nonsense, there was no fooling around. We were always really serious about doing something really, really well. And I think that's the main point. I think it was just the way I presented the music, as it was exciting. The older music that I found really spoke to me, and I discovered it also spoke to the kids more than a lot of the contemporary music, although they loved the pep band music, which wasn't one of my favorites, but I went along and I learned an awful lot of pop music. I keep going. I just don't give up. If I don't succeed at something, I give it 100%, and if it doesn't go, it doesn't go, and I go on to something else. And I taught that way. I taught with the idea that if you're trying to do a good job, you will succeed in what you do. Maybe that's one of those things that seems the most important to me anyway. I think teaching the last few years, when we started to see kids with ADHD and learning disabilities more on the autism spectrum, I wish I had known when I was teaching that they were just like me. I was ADHD and I grew up and I never knew it. That was the reason I had all kinds of reading problems that I couldn't control. And when I was teaching, especially the last few years, I had the most trouble with the kids that were like that. If I had only known at that time, I could have made such a difference in their life. Instead, I made it hell. I didn't learn until a year after I was done teaching that I had grown up this way. There was a reason for the way I was. The things that I learned to do because of that, and because of the fact that I never gave up, I kept trying, I learned an awful lot of things that I probably wouldn't have learned. Just the fact that knowing who I was and why I was that way maybe would have made the difference.
How do you want people to remember you?
I don't know. People remember what they want to remember about you. Everybody has a different opinion, and most of the time we have no idea that what they think of us is even close to what we think they think of us. Most people don't tell you. They don't want to even get close to saying what they really feel about you.